Bucky Dillon Show is a Liberty Revolt Media production. Learn more about us at www.libertyrevoltmedia.com. We hope you enjoy the show. What's up, guys? Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt and 1360 KHNC. Hey, guys, check out the website if you want to hear the broadcast anywhere, anytime. 1360khnc.com. Hit the shop button. Check out our CBD products. 100% natural, 100% locally, 100% lab certified, and one of the best prices you can get for CBD products anywhere. It's great for your health, and it really does help us keep the movement alive. Guys, I would like to talk about what it means to actually fight in politics. We hear this kind of rhetoric all the time from politicians, from media pundits, and from social media influencers. You need to fight. You need to take your country back. And I don't think everyone really knows what it means to fight. I think we often forget to actually define it and actually define victory. So we're going to get into all of that and more. But first, the Bucky Dillon Show is sponsored by my friend Jerry Axum at Sears Real Estate. Go to SearsRealEstate.com, hit the agents button. You can find Jerry on there. You can find testimonials about him. So it's not just my word. But I'm serious, this guy is sharp, he's patriotic, and he genuinely wants to help people. He's been in northern Colorado for 60 years. He's been in real estate since 2005. He knows what he's looking for. He knows how to find a good deal. He knows how to find a good house and make sure that you're getting the best for your money. And you don't just get him, you get the entire Sears real estate team, one of the best in the business, looking out for you on one of the most important transactions of your life. Investing in real estate is a great way to protect your money from inflation and a great way to build wealth. Sorry, excuse me, I'm pre-recording this because of a snowstorm that's about to hit tonight, and you may be hearing my beautiful, gorgeous 2.5-year-old daughter in the background, so bear with me, folks. Jerry at SearsRealEstate.com. That's Jerry at SearsRealEstate.com. Guys, one of the complaints you hear most often from conservative voters is that Republicans don't fight. And fair enough, man. It seems like Republicans are too polite. It seems like they're too polished. They're too rehearsed. They're so worried about the media doxing them, which, trust me, they're going to do anyways. The mainstream media is going to treat Republicans like they're Darth Vader no matter what. So if you're going to be treated like that regardless, and you're keeping in mind that our media is driven by outrage, you might as well just say what you gotta say and let them react to it how they will. And if you're not too outrageous but they react outrageously, you're going to come out on top. This is what happened over and over again through the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. I really didn't support him during the campaign. I was trying to vote for Bernie Sanders. He got cheated out because Democrats are slimy people who virtue signal, but they don't mean any of the moral things they say. But, you know, Donald Trump was able to flip the media on their head because they were constantly more outrageous than whatever outrageous thing he could think to say, and it became this non-stop doom and apocalypse, shock, rage, bait media cycle bombarding us all of the time. Guys, the media is going to treat you like Darth Vader no matter what. So just say what you got to say and be honest with the American people. Donald Trump was so successful with the conservative base because he represented a willingness to fight. And he did a lot to push back on the traditional Republican caricatures. He did a lot to push back against the Looney Tune left, which has been taking over every legitimate institution of cultural news media and political power in the country. He pushed back on Washington and so many of the traditional ideas of what a politician is supposed to be like. He was absolutely, if he was nothing else, he was a fighter. He was a wrecking ball to the swamp. That's what he was in people's minds. And hey, sometimes that wrecking ball hit the establishment or hit its target, and it was glorious. And sometimes it hit a baby, and it was hard to watch. And it was hard to support. But, people were so sick of traditional Republican candidates who seemed polished and timid and polite and didn't push back against the media more than anything else. The media that was pretending to be objective, but overwhelmingly acting as the communications branch of the Democrat Party. So many people in my personal life, if you don't pay that much attention to politics, and all you hear from the media is just glowing news about Democrats and terrible accusations about Republicans, what are you going to think? If you're not looking into it yourself, you're going to take it on its face value, which, Donald Trump, if he did nothing else, did a great job of destroying the credibility of the media and exposing them for what they were. And I think that hopefully we can continue doing that. That really does set the stage for everything else I'm going to say today about what it means to fight. Thanks for listening to the Bucky Dillon Show on 1360 KHNC. So Trump actually did do a pretty good job at bringing the fight back to politics in regards to the Republican Party. But now that we've learned to fight, I think it's important that we learn how to fight effectively. One of the biggest problems that Trump introduced was he fought so hard and so dirty that he actually fostered almost as much resistance as he did support. And that's why he became such a polarizing figure. So how can we utilize that fighting spirit in a way that doesn't foster opposition simultaneously? And this is truly the key to fighting. We need to define what it means to fight, what it means to fight effectively, and what defines victory, I suppose. And in a democratic republic where elections are won by voters, it seems to me that victory would be defined by persuading more people to vote for you or your policy proposals. So if persuasion is key, then it should be key to fighting. Instead, we have this epidemic of people engaging in futile and even counterproductive rhetoric to I guess own the libs on social media or something, to a base that already agrees with them and persuades nobody, or politicians going to some political event and putting on their best gospel speak to an audience of absolutely zero independents or persuadable Democrats. None of that strikes me as winning. In fact, I think often it's part of the problem. I think far more people are upset at the political divides in our country than they are at one party or the other. I'm one of those people. So even when I agree with Ted Cruz on a lot of his policy positions, when he goes to CPAC and he acts like he uses the influctuations of a Southern gospel preacher to just spout out Republican talking points to an audience of people who are already bought in, it just doesn't seem like it's meaningful to me. It doesn't seem like it's actually engaging in the fights that we should be engaging in. And it's pretty cringy. I mean, like I said, I agree with most of it, and I'm cringing. And sure, that has its place, I guess. You want to boost enthusiasm right before an election. You want to energize your base. And a lot of people, I suppose, do get their information from events like these. And it's important that our politicians, our representatives, our pundits actually go out there and give people the information they need to make up their own minds and to hopefully go forth and change the minds of other people. But it seems like the incentive structures are all wrong, and just getting more and more riled up isn't the solution. In fact, since when are revved up mobs ever making good choices or putting a good face on the things they claim to represent? I think the Black Lives Matter protests in January 6th is a perfect example of how revved up mobs just fuming off of what their pundits and politicians have been spewing out to them can result in some pretty nasty consequences that seems to me to be utterly counterproductive and a total turnoff for most people. So yeah, we need to speak to our base, but I think there's better ways of doing it than getting into our conservative safe spaces and just raising our voices over and over each other in some attempt to get more attention, to get more media coverage. We should be speaking with our base in a way that's genuine and informative, and teaching them how to argue more effectively and how to make a moral case for our policy proposals, not just launching hate at people who disagree with us. We actually need people who disagree with us. I say this all the time. Our country is going to face an infinite variety of challenges, and we'll actually need progressive thinkers pointing out disparities and discriminations. We need people who see problems like wealth inequality and student loan debt in a way that we don't, and are constantly trying to come up with solutions to that. We also need conservatives reminding people, hey guys, let's do things in a sustainable way. Let's respect our traditions because there's hidden wisdom in them, right? We don't want to base our agenda off some faraway imaginary utopia of what could be at the expense of what works. And so there's a genuine conversation to be had there. And that's why we need to be engaging with each other. And that should be the primary focus, not engaging with ourselves to become more angry, to become more passionate about defending policies without thinking about them. That's where we should really be focusing our energy, is thinking more. And you hear people say, gosh, wouldn't it be better if we had more critical thinking in this country? Guys, I will settle for literally any kind of thinking at this point in our country. And again, January 6th is a perfect example. It indicated a lack of thinking. There was no thinking going on there. And this is what I mean by politicians being disingenuous and just utilizing a crisis, or utilizing what was probably some legitimate grievances to push for this fiery rhetoric in the name of fighting. January 6th was never, I don't know where people keep getting this idea that somehow January 6th was going to be the event that turned the election around. It was never going to be that. But, our politicians showed up there and they put on this performance about how they were fighting, when all of the solutions to our electoral issues that we had in 2020 were things that needed to be solved on a local and state level. There was nothing that Mike Pence or Republicans in Congress could actually do. And of course, after the fact, January 6th is something that's going to be held over the heads of regular conservatives, even conservatives who absolutely disagreed with everything that was going on there, who actively spoke out against it. It's going to be used as a club to silence regular conservatives, disarm them, to alienate them, to shut down any kind of organizational activism on social media of any group to the right of Hillary Clinton. So, and it's going to continue. They are going to bring up January 6th as long as it is effective, and it's going to be effective in the heads of moderates and Democrats for a long time. Completely counterproductive, indicates an utter lack of thinking. And it also works as an example of a tendency we have of focusing our efforts far away from where we might actually make the most difference, which would be at the local and state level. And this is part of the reason why I am so passionately urging for your guys' support with this newsletter I'm coming out with. For those who haven't heard, I am designing a monthly newsletter that I will be delivering to all the businesses in Fort Collins that have waiting areas where their customers have access to magazines, or wherever else magazines may be left. I'm coordinating with the CSU chapter president of Turning Point USA to get them on campuses, and we are going to include messaging and optics that I believe will introduce more people to conservatarianism, which is my word for conservative and libertarian philosophy, to people who may disagree with us and may be predisposed to even dislike us in a way that they might actually be receptive to. So, please, if you have a business or know someone with a business that is interested in advertising, put them in contact with me. Bucky Dillon at khnc.net, libertyrevoltmedia@gmail.com. Let them know what we're trying to do, that we are trying to introduce people to ideas that maybe they haven't heard before and make our country a better place. And if you want to make a donation, that would really, really, really help. Again, Bucky Dillon at khnc.net or libertyrevoltmedia@gmail.com. I'm going to have a page dedicated to all of our local Colorado representatives and their contact information, as well as all of the upcoming public events between our representatives and the community, as well as the school districts and the community, so that people can go to these public events and utilize them to make a persuasive case for our best interest. And please help support this mission. It's expensive. It takes time. It takes energy. We got to design them. We have to create the article content. We have to search and find for the advertisers. And then we have to go out there and distribute them and make a case. So again, please consider supporting us in that mission if you can. Because in my opinion, that's what it means to actually fight, and fight effectively. It means packaging our ideas and selling them to broad swaths of people who don't agree with us and probably have prejudices in their head against us. When I say us, I mean conservatives and libertarians. You guys know what I'm talking about. We need to actually be attempting to persuade people and get engaged in the culture, not just talking in circles to ourselves and then cranking up the temperature out of some misguided attempts to garnish some attention and score cheap and meaningless political points. This may even derive from a weak-mindedness that is afraid of encountering an argument that might, shatter your worldview. We need to actually put our ideas up against the best intellectual ideas of those who disagree with us. So many Republican politicians and media influencers just put up straw men, representatives of the most fringy left-wing ideas, and then debate those. When even a lot of Democrats disagree with like communism and socialism, we're not winning them over. We need to talk to moderates. We need to be friends with people who bridge the gap between conservatism and liberalism, because you can't persuade someone without being in a certain level of trust. You actually have to, in a way, kind of be friends with them first. They're not going to listen to people. This was Trump's problem. It doesn't matter how great your ideas are if everyone thinks you're a total jerk. So we actually have to have civil dialogue and smart dialogue. We have to be thinking about these things. We need to be willing to allow people into our movement who don't necessarily agree with us on all aspects of our movement. We need to have tolerance for people. We need to have tolerance for different opinions, but strongly defend our own and present them with some core moralities, right? We need to focus on arguing on a moral level, and to do that, you need to have some moral credibility. Having some moral credibility and making our arguments on moral terms, as well as being able to actually civilly engage with people who may not agree with us, is what is going to help mitigate some of these prejudices that people believe they harbor for those who belong to the movement they disagree with. This is how we speak to someone who has a different worldview and get them to tolerate us and understand us. You're listening to the Bucky Dillon Show, hosted by the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC. This is why politics usually comes down to rhetoric, and rhetoric is just the art of making your argument as persuasive as you possibly can. If you can't make your arguments palatable to people and broad swaths of people, then what do they actually matter? Ethos is important, and having an ethos, having a credible moral character, is what will make people who aren't necessarily as open-minded to your ideas more open-minded. Just shouting invectives and cursing the other side as deplorable, as irredeemable, as infantile, as stupid, you're not only disqualifying your opinion, you're disqualifying the opinions of anyone who associates themselves with you or publicly admits that they follow you, and we need that. This is what we saw happen with Trump. All of the dialogue was upended by just the blinding, unmitigated hatred for him, and he fostered so much aggression against him and so much opposition against him that even if he expanded the Republican base, he expanded the left-wing base more. And that may work out in the end, him turning up the temperature like this, because if more people pay attention, they might actually start to notice that they've been only hearing one side of things for a very long time, and they might become more curious and start listening to the other side. And so it may in the end garnish us some support. But like I keep saying, now that we have that spirit to fight, we should really focus on how do we fight effectively. And we fight effectively by persuading people. It's the easiest thing in the world to throw out red meat rhetoric to people who already agree and take shots at moderates on your own side as being, not committed enough to the fight or not fighting hard enough, and therefore implying that somehow you yourself are the true fighter when you're not actually persuading anyone. You're not talking with anyone new. So, many conservatives do this. They call themselves true fighters, and they accuse anyone who doesn't fall in line with them 100% ideologically as rhinos, Republicans in name only. You'll notice that I don't use the term rhino because I think it's stupid. I actually think we need people who bridge the gap between us and those who disagree with us. We can't be falling into the same cancel culture that the left falls into. I mean, I just don't see the positive side of this. We want to try to get people to rally around core beliefs, and we want to try to make those beliefs more widespread, but I don't think we do that by driving everyone out until there's none of us left but a few radicals who make us look bad. I think that a lot of this cancel culture on the left, particularly in big tech censorship, actually kind of backfires against them because, say you're an average person and you get online. What are you going to see if all the radical conservatives have been banned? Well, you see moderate, very friendly, well-spoken conservatives juxtaposed with Antifa and wild, woke, offensive. It's racism. The identity politics they're pushing, it's synonymous with racism, really. So while they're canceling everybody, we should be taking advantage of that, not engaging in it. We should be, while they're throwing everyone out for not being woke enough, we should be the group that's holding the door open and saying, hey, come on in, have a drink with us, be a part of us. We you're welcome here, even if you don't toe our party line. We shouldn't be just, talking in circles to each other in our little conservative safe spaces. And it seems to me that a lot of people in conservative media, the politicians and the influencers and the media pundits, don't actually have a genuine interest in helping or implementing legitimate solutions. Not all, but clearly some of them don't have an interest in that. And here's why. Their dedication to the conservative movement is just based on money. And so they're selling ads. And in order to make those ads effective, they don't necessarily need an expanding audience. They need a very predictable and loyal audience that they can aggravate into action, into spending money. So that this is why our media just peddles rage bait all the time, right? They want a loyal base of people who don't trust anyone else, who are incredibly desperate and aggravated. And people pay attention more when they're angry, and they're even angrier when they're losing. So they can just keep feeding this monster instead of actually trying to engage in the real fight, which is having difficult conversations and challenging the strongest opposing arguments. And once you kind of understand that this is how media business models often work, then you can see why they peddle this rage bait. Because, human beings, just as a psychological phenomenon, are significantly more susceptible to negative emotion than we are to positive emotion. And the answer is because you can only be so happy, but you can be totally dead and suffer a lot on the way, and so can everyone you know. So just as a survival mechanism, we are way more sensitive to negative emotion than we are positive emotion. And a lot of our media entities, almost by design incentive, have no motivation to actually persuade anyone, and in fact they just profit off of inflaming the impersuadable and making people more desperate, more bereft of influence and power. It's really sad to see this going on in our country. The opposite of cancel culture, resisting cancel culture, would be invitation culture. It would be opening the door to people instead of closing the door to people, and having genuine dialogue with them in a compelling and meaningful way. The mainstream media outlets, they're just prying open our political divides and our social divides for profit. Stop supporting them. Consider supporting us instead. You can send money to us, just even if it's $1 or $2. Dillon Knowlton 1776. That's my Venmo. DILLON KNOWLTON 1776. Or go to libertyrevoltmedia.com and hit the donation button. It really does help, and we will keep fighting for this. We genuinely love our country, and we want to see what's best for our country, what's best for all of the people of our country. Please consider supporting what we do. What's really interesting to me is that moderates get a lot of flack for actually implementing some independent thinking every once in a while. I mean, what a shock. We might have some Congress people who are actually swing voters, who actually think for themselves instead of self-conceding so that they can toe the party line. I mean, every president that manages to pass some bipartisan bill, let's set aside the fact that the only time Congress comes together to sign something bipartisan, it's the Patriot Act, or it's let's go to war or something, right? It's the only time we seem to come together on bipartisan issues is when they're screwing the American people. Let's set that aside. But every president, and always the leader of the House or the Senate Majority Leader, whoever it is, they always come out and say, we're so proud that we passed this bipartisan piece of legislation. And what they're referring to is the fact that this bipartisanship is the exception, not the rule. That's why they have to emphasize it. And gosh, God forbid we have some Congress people who are swing voters and actually judge policies based on their merit instead of their party affiliation. Gosh, what a tragedy, right? And people, we should really stop giving so much flack to people who are willing to break ranks, because it actually indicates a level of independent thinking and courage. They often get hammered hard for it. And when I say people who break ranks, people are going to immediately associate that with Mitt Romney, right? Because Mitt Romney voted pro-impeachment, and he's gone against the Republicans and Trump several times now, and of course the left always discovers this newfound respect, right? Always, and then as soon as they go back and vote with their party again, the left casts them out like the leper they always were, right? But we should. I'm not referring to Mitt Romney because I think we all know he's just doing it out of spite. He's not doing it out of independent thinking. He just hates Trump because of personal grievance from the primaries when they were talking about Trump being wealthy, and Trump goes, "Yeah, I'm wealthy. You know what? I've bought off all of you before. Mitt Romney, I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees. Believe me, he was begging for my endorsement." And it was so good. So I'm not referring to breaking ranks with your party out of personal animosity for an individual. I mean breaking ranks because of intellectual sincerity, right? Because of intellectual independence. And I think we need it. One of the biggest problems we have in our communities isn't the nefarious unintended consequences or intended consequences of Democrat policies or Republican policies. I think a much bigger issue in our country is actually super majorities, because then you're not accountable to your constituents. If all you have to do is slap the right letter to your name, then you don't have to work for people's vote. And I think if our politicians actually had to work for our vote, they would behave so much better. What you have in a supermajority is a monopoly on political power, which means the same thing when there's any other kind of monopoly. They abuse that monopoly on power to push legislations, to push policies, to influence things in a way that benefits them and not the people that you would hope they would be benefiting, right? I mean, it would be totally admirable for a politician to get elected by their base and then get into office and actually concede to the other side and implement policies to help represent the broadest possible constituency, not just the activist base that got them in there. And we never see that because they're immediately stabbed from all sides, right? And it really is a shame that we have politicians get elected because of a more radicalized activist base that actually shows up in the primaries, because who does that? But this activist base, and then they get into office and only cater to those people while referring to everyone else as amoral. And I think this is more of a problem on the left than the right, because the left seems to see themselves as morally superior. All of their arguments are not, we have better ideas. It's always, we are better people. And so they're not interested in catering to people who disagree with them, because they don't think the people who disagree with them are wrong. They think they're bad. So I think this tendency is much more pernicious on the left than it does the right, because as far as I can tell, the right believes, this is the generic argument. The right believes that the left is naive, and the left believes that the right is ill motivated, that they're actually nefarious, evil people. And it really is a tragedy. And again, this is all kind of wrapped around in these media narratives and the financial incentives that drive them. I mean, you can get tremendous success in this country by grievance peddling, by opposition tactics, by convincing people that they are under attack, by demagoguery, and it's on both sides. It's hilarious to me to see Bernie Sanders go out there and say things like, Donald Trump is trying to break people up and divide us based on race. We are building a coalition of blacks and Mexicans and LGBTQ alphabet people and the Asian people. And he just goes through and he just divides everyone up by group and lists them off in the same sentence that he said it's bad to divide people up. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and people don't seem to see this at all. They're so convinced of their own morality. But it takes a tremendous courage to actually be an independent thinker and not automatically attribute ill motivation or stupidity to people who disagree with you, because the vast majority of the time, it's simply not the case. You're listening to The Bucky Dillon Show. I would like to just encourage us to think more carefully about what actions we want to see implemented, and is that really a winning strategy? Actions both politically and culturally and in our media. Or if we're just defining fighting as engaging in pointless, unwinnable battles that win nobody over, waste our time, disappoint us, and leave us socially divided, and leave our supporters more discouraged and downtrodden than they were to begin with. We actually do need people who think differently, and we can really take advantage of some of the nefarious culture movements going on in our country that are driving people out and leaving people with really nowhere to go. We should be taking these people in, and we should be having well-reasoned conversations with them with airtight logic, by actually understanding conservative principles and where and how government actually works and what problems it can actually solve. This is so that we're not convincing people to, say, storm the Capitol in order to try to solve a problem that could actually only be solved by engaging in local politics and reforming laws at the state level. We need to be honest about that. And we need to be willing to actually go out there and speak and engage in substantive, debates. So we shouldn't hide from our policies. We shouldn't hide from our beliefs, and we shouldn't hide from people who disagree with us. I think if we actually package our opinions in a moderate, confident, and inviting way, I think people will actually resonate to that a lot more. Guys, if you want to support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsor, Jerry Axum at Sears Real Estate. That's Jerry at Sears Real Estate, by going to the website 1360khnc.com and picking up some CBD products, or by making a donation or finding businesses that may be interested in advertising on my show or on my station or in my newsletter. We are doing many things to get more involved in the community and more involved in the culture, and we are working tirelessly to try to make a positive impact. And it is truly an honor to be here with you, to be sharing my ideas with you, and I hope that you will engage in conversation with me in the comment section. Follow me on social media. It really does help me reach a broader and younger audience, and that is really where I would like to start making a difference. That's how we take personal responsibility. That's how we conserve the things that the conservative movement claims to be conserving, but often isn't. Guys, remember that being a patriot doesn't mean you love the geography. It means you love the American people, all of the American people. Thanks for listening to The Bucky Dillon Show. Have a wonderful day.